Welcome to Module 3 for Mapping the DNA of an Idea. This is Lori Elliott again with Conceptual E. And in this particular module, we're going to take a look at people. Now, before we get into this detail, I just want to remind you that this is a recorded version of this module. And as being a recording, it's going to be slightly different than your live workshop. But you can use this particular video as follow-up to reinforce what you've learned. So first of all, it's very important to understand the types of people who are involved or could become involved in your venture, as well as their personalities, abilities, aspirations, and needs. This includes not only your staff, customers, and funders, but also a lot of other stakeholders. Using the tools we provide can help you understand people involved directly and indirectly in your venture, and then help to move your business idea to a concept and then to a seed model. Now in this module, we really don't get into the tools. In Module 4, you'll see that we will begin going through all the various tools that we use for this very early stage, which is ideation. And you'll see how as you go through it, you'll be able to identify gaps that you don't know or don't understand about the people involved, about your venture, about the context, and then it will then also help you to move forward and develop your idea in such a way that it addresses the major issues that you need to in order to be successful. In this particular module, we're going to be looking at several different objectives. First, we will look at personal identity and how that interacts with ideas. This will help you better understand the interaction between ideas and yourself, your customers, and other stakeholders. We will also talk about the three main dimensions of personal identity. We'll describe things that typically influence your personal development. This also facilitates a better understanding of the factors that impact you, your customers, and other stakeholders involved with your venture. We'll also talk about a new construct for economies and markets, and this construct is actually based on people being the center of the economy. Finally, we'll talk about how people's unique needs actually affect markets. First, I want to emphasize that ideas serve people. Rather than showing customer segments, this diagram identifies different ways entrepreneurs can serve people. It starts at commodities that serves people's basic needs and proceeds clockwise to more innovative offerings designed to fulfill the higher needs of individuals. So if you see here, we go from products to services to solutions to experiences and to individual, and that has to do with identity. So first of all, commodities are price-driven raw materials like rice or fish, wood or cotton, minerals or metals, and precious stones. These are sold in the open market, and commodity markets are usually volatile with price going up and down based on supply. Competition is high and sales are typically price-based. Products and services are another way to serve people. Products are typically physical items, though they can also be packages of less tangible things like software or bundled services. Services are what you do for people or groups of people. And those groups of people can be businesses, organizations, so on and so forth. Solutions are combinations of products and services that provide holistic results to customers. They are usually targeted to customer groups, goals, needs, and markets. Experiences are based on products, services, and solutions that serve people. Special features and customer handling are added to address the entire life cycle of customer interactions with your products, your services, your solutions, and with the company itself. Experiences occur in physical stores or offices, online, through email and social media, and even in the community. Convenience, ease, innovation, and style are part of the customer experience. Apple is known for customer experience. Now, experience can also be things like tours that you take to different countries, to see different things, to learn different things. So experience is really a very broad term. Now, ideas can also serve through a focus on individuals and their identities. That is what our company actually does. Our product and service offerings are aligned with people's authentic identities. And when we do so, we actually feel that we can offer the best value. A focus on individual service, and it's really not necessarily individual service like you think as someone being a concierge, but individual service that is unique for that person. So if someone is going to be a pilot, then there are certain things that empower them to be a pilot, right? And so if you're servicing that group and you're servicing them for that particular purpose, then you look at things that are tied to their identity that makes them, prime candidates to be a pilot, right? One is risk, one is adventure, right? That's a part of their identity. They like to take risks, as an example. So the key point here is that ideas can serve people by enabling access to products, commodities, services, solutions, experiences, and as well as the benefits that come from these. And this also includes serving the individual identity. Now, a special note, products, services, solutions, and even experiences can become commodities or commoditized at some point. And this is, again, where competition is based on price, not uniqueness. This is normally when there starts to be a lot of competition in that particular space. And so as there's more competition, the prices, will go down, or there will be more, diverse options and things like that. So it can go really either way. But typically what happens at some point is that it starts pressing down the price. And then you have now people purchasing based on price because everything looks the same or is similar enough that there's not really anything distinctive that would cause them to want to pay more money. Now, Apple is very good with their brand name. So brand is very important. It's not just about your product and service, but it's about the brand that you build around it. And one typical example is basic computer hardware, right? We see a lot of low-cost computers. We see a lot of replicas, of new technology. And so that's a very good example. Hard drives, phones that are vanilla, okay, that provide the basic service. The prices on those are a lot lower than those that have unique features or a lot of features, or are tied to a strong brand name. Shortly, we will discuss how a focus on serving individuals impacts the market. Now let's look at personal identity. People's understanding of this concept varies considerably. People often view personality as what they and others think they know about themselves, such as name, location, occupation, gender, ethnicity, and so forth. We also think, as individuals, that we can create our own personal identity like a brand, but that is not entirely the case. Your experiences, family, friends, work, and things can impact your personality, but there is also your core identity. This is who you really are, what is in your DNA. Just as for plants, your DNA is the seed or essence of your potential. Self-knowledge leads to greater alignment with your identity and ability to live your purpose and destiny. Being true to your core identity is a form of personal integrity or wholeness. Your full identity unfolds over time if you work with it. It can be diminished or get stuck if you work against it. The danger of not recognizing or fulfilling your identity is evident when you try to live through the lives of other people, whom you admire and want to be like, or whose success you want to obtain. When that happens, you will likely ignore your true identity and potential. You can learn from others, but you need to become who you were designed to be. Many people, including customers, do not understand the personal identity or needs. Yet these same needs create markets. Shakespeare said, "To thine own self be true," meaning to be true to your identity or authentic self. That creates the greatest stability, success, and happiness. As a human, you will still have the typical ups and downs of life, but when you are true to your full identity, you are better able to weather the challenges and stay focused on your dreams. Then everything in your life will start making more sense in an integrated way. This is called convergence. When starting a business or venture, you will begin to find the right resources, people, markets, customers, and solutions to offer. And in fact, you'll be much better at it and you'll be much more successful because, again, you were designed to provide a unique benefit to the world, both personally and in the ideas and institutions that you create. Being more in touch with your personal identity opens up doors and aligns things in your life to help fulfill your purpose. Now, your life challenge, however, is to continually discover your personal identity and then fulfill the purpose and destiny aligned with that identity. The challenge of discovering your personal identity is an ever-unfolding journey that you must make throughout your life. Most people say, hey, I just want to develop this venture. What does personal identity have to do with it? Here's the secret. You are the source of power and capacity that is in the seed you are trying to create for your venture. Everything you need to be successful is sitting inside of you. That includes your idea, your development of that idea, and what you envision the idea to become. You need to uncork that first, then you can release the potential of your venture. You can unpack the power and ability of your venture to grow because you are putting the right ideas, mechanisms, people, etc. into play to succeed. Everything flows from discovering and using your personal identity, your creativity, innovation, success, and significance. Your venture can be the mechanism for activating the personal identity of yourself and others as it helps plug people into the power to prosper. Now, when we talk about personal identity, there are actually three dimensions. First of all, there are the characteristics and attributes that you were born with. There's your life path, which is affected by the choices you make or that others, such as parents or authority figures, make for you. And then we also have defining moments, which are experiences that impact your life, such as World War II for the generation that lived through the 1940s, a major devastating natural disaster in your region, or a significant personal event such as a marriage, a death, a graduation, or your first job. Defining moments are not just individual experiences, but often involve family, communities, and nations. Many defining moments occur along with major decisions. Others are out of your control. Defining moments often change or solidify, reinforce the life path you are taking. Now, just to get a taste of understanding your identity, and it's interesting, I find that many people may have taken personality style tests, but it's not something that they really, continually look at themselves in order to see areas where they can further develop. And the thing that I have found, and that people are finding more and more, is that as you do more self-development, you now have the strength to develop other things, including ideas and ventures. And so in actuality, the way we approach this, if you are in our coaching programs, Creationeering, which would be the next step after this particular workshop, is that we actually have self-directed coaching for personal development. So what we're talking about in this module, as it relates to yourself, we actually have a path for you to follow so that you can continue that process. Because honestly, as you learn more about yourself, you'll find that you have power to do so many different things that you never imagined. And that really gives you the push in order to, keep that pressure on to develop that venture or idea, and magnifies and amplifies your passion. So we're going to do an activity, and I'm going to explain it, but then if you're in a live session, your facilitator is going to pause me rather, and you can do the same if you're doing this on your own. So in this table, it shows some factors associated with the dimensions of personal identity we just saw. Okay, and these are pretty generic things. when you go through Propel, which is our self-directed coaching personal development path, you'll see that there's just a lot of different dimensions. But again, we just wanted to give you a taste in mapping the DNA of an idea. So what you're going to do is you're going to take 2 minutes to write down a few key characteristics about yourself from each category. You don't need to spend a lot of time on this. Simply note the things that are obvious and maybe indicate characteristics and attributes that have impacted your decision to move into this idea or this venture, okay? Because often there are things that happen to you, experiences that you've had or observed that actually cause you to decide to go down a particular path, even in choosing the venture that you want to pursue. After you are finished, I'll ask several of you to share some of the things you noted about your identity. You can begin to write down your characteristics now. Okay, so you've had your 2 minutes. And again, you should have paused, okay, so you could take your 2 minutes. And before I ask you to debrief, I'm going to just share a few things about myself. So one of the things that I think dramatically influenced me is my joy for travel and history and learning, being in different places. And it's hard to say where I got that wanderlust, okay? But I do remember when I was very little, my mother was a teacher, primary school teacher, and we lived in a city where there were a lot of people from different nationalities. And it was because it was a college town. It was a large college town. And in the neighborhoods around the school that my mother taught, she was a public school teacher, there were just such a wide variety of cultures. And so she had units with her students where, each student could bring in and talk about their culture and share their food and the clothing and, whatever else. And of course, I was young at the time when she was teaching at this school, but I was at another school. And I would come and I would, engage with the students and with my mom and with their activities. And again, I really don't know what precisely got me connected to that. But when I was 7 years old, I asked my mom to paint the British flag on my wall in my bedroom. So from the age of 7 through 13, I had red, white, and blue and the British flag on one of my walls. And I just think that I just love the history and I just loved learning about different cultures. And so then at age 15, I took my first trip abroad, and I'd been wanting to do that because I played an instrument. And the first country I ended up going to outside of North America, because I had been to Canada, was actually Morocco in North Africa, which is highly unusual. And even at that time, it was even more unusual because it was not really an open country at that time. And so, and then the next year I got to go to England, if you remember the British flag, and I was there the year that Princess Diana and Charles actually had gotten married. And so, so all of these experiences just added one on top of the other, where I just had such a view of a global world. Okay, and then I got interested in Africa because I finally realized, and I'm African American, so this tells you a little bit about what we're taught in our schools here. Not much about Africa. But as I began to interface with some people who were, coming and going from Africa, I learned a lot more, and I learned how much it was very connected to the rest of the world and all of our history. And so then when I saw the need to be in Africa to help in economic development, it just seemed like a great thing to do. Now, every place has its challenges. So that's actually how I kind of got involved in Africa, not so much on the entrepreneurial side, but there was just something always within inside of me that said, I need to go beyond living where I live and, beyond my country and, going to see other places. So So that's my tale of how I ended up where I am, and my personality, even though I can't pinpoint precisely where I got the urge, because my parents, not that they don't like to travel, but they're not, they don't have this global desire to travel and all of that. So, but anyway, so having shared that, that has a significant impact on my venture, as you can see, because I am one of the key things. Our foundation is based in Africa, so this has dramatically impacted the direction that I took. So now it's your opportunity to share who you are. And so again, we're going to pause just for a moment, or you're going to pause me, and you're going to pause, and you're just going to reflect again on those particular characteristics that you identified. But before we actually pause, or you pause me, I want to add some wisdom. Your identity is very valuable, okay? And a lot of people don't see themselves as very valuable, but you're highly valuable. Even if you don't think so, companies do. That's why people try to steal your identity. That's why companies like to track your behavior and conversations, because they learn a lot of valuable information about you. Often, when you get free services, you're exchanging access to your identity. So it's best to learn how to appropriately share aspects of your identity. You do need to share some, but not everything. Your identity is actually the highest thing of value that you will ever have. And every person has great value. Now, what I want some of you to do is to share some of the characteristics you noted about your personal identity. And again, if you can connect as to how that has led you to this venture or impacting your venture, that would be great. But really, we just want to know a little bit more about you. And again, only share what you feel comfortable. And so put me on pause, and the facilitator will continue with this discussion. And when we come back, I'll round everything up. So what can we actually learn from this exercise? How can self-knowledge improve your venture success? Okay, and again, think about this, okay, and see if you come up with other things other than the things that I'm going to mention. Whether you are applying to one of our programs or are already in our co-development program, going through this exercise several times and pondering the results can lead you to better insight into your purpose and identity. You may be surprised at what you discover. As people learn more about themselves, they can set boundaries when sharing that information with others. Gaining more knowledge about your purpose and destiny will energize you and clarify what you are passionate about. How do you think this knowledge can help you progress from an initial idea to a more developed concept for your project or venture? How will finding and following your passion increase your chance of entrepreneurial success? And why is better knowledge of your personal identity an excellent input into developing your idea into a venture? Okay, and let me just give you some possible answers. And again, you can put me on pause, or you can just listen to what I have to say to close out this discussion. Ventures are usually developed from problems or needs. So if you or people around you or people that you observe, stakeholders, have a particular problem, that may actually be a great opportunity for a great company and great success. You can gain better insight into others and recognize the value of yourself and others. The more problems you actually experience in your own life and that which you see others experiencing, the more you will understand the human condition. And this is very important. Most people don't really understand this, but this is very important into creating something that is going to be highly valued in the market. There are a lot of people that create great technologies that are useful, but they have a hard time getting them into the market because they cannot package it in a way that the market will receive it. Okay. So from here, let's talk about the makeup of a person and how knowledge of this can improve the chances of success of your venture. As you have most likely discovered, people are not just who we see externally. People have an inner spirit, life force, or personality that is their essence. It's their spiritual DNA, if you will. People also have a soul, the part of a person that wants to commune with and learn from things outside of themselves, including other people, a deity, or a higher power. The soul also includes a person's mind, thoughts, emotions, will, conscience, and moral values. The soul processes input from both the physical senses and also influences from the spirit. The part we can see most readily is the body. This includes not only the person's outward physical characteristics, but also the person's mental and emotional attributes and status that are demonstrated, like in behavior. When we consider stakeholders and customers for a venture, we are trying to understand their emotions and thoughts so that we can induce behavior that we want. Now, actually, I should say we don't want to do that, okay? But this is typical of what happens with companies. And that's because they're trying to get people to buy their product, right? But really the reason that we should have this understanding is that we want to understand people and find better ways to serve them, not manipulate them. From this, we learned that everyone should operate from their center. Okay, so that means who are you, your true identity, your true potential, the DNA of who you are, develop that and work on the inside, because as you work on the inside, it begins to overflow to the outside. And that's where you get the greatest ideas and ventures and strength to achieve all of this. As you discover more about yourself, you will find that your life choices, your ventures, and other things of importance to you will begin to align more closely with your personal identity and life purpose, allowing your venture and other things to come to life. Now, just to give you a general understanding again about just the human condition. So, this stuff is very elementary, but it's helpful in when you start looking at the emotions and feelings and behaviors of people, it's good to understand what's underlying all of that. So basically, how do individuals develop? Personal development is influenced by biological growth, maturation, and bodily functions. Your spirit and your soul also have an impact. If your spirit is activated and in tune and your soul aligned with your spirit, they can drive you to make sacrifices when you normally wouldn't. You will make better choices when you follow your spirit's prompting, since it is aligned with your identity and life purpose. Now, this is a very nebulous, very vague area, so this is not something you just, do overnight. It's something that you're actually training yourself to sense and understand who you are, what's inside your spirit, and then how that can be brought to the outside and be manifested in a way that benefits you and benefits others. And again, the self-directed coaching that we have, it is a process, it's a path in order to help you do that, okay? And even after a couple months, you should start noticing a significant difference in your understanding and how you make decisions, and begin to see how your venture and your ideas starts coming to life. Also, the environmental context can impact your development positively or negatively. Remember, the environmental context includes economic, social, political, technological, geographic, and other factors. Individual development also occurs when you reflect on feedback from the environment that comes in response to your behavior or something that's done to you, to the things that you do or say or cause to happen. Reflection can also lead to lessons learned from experience and the examples of others. For instance, a child raised in a poor family by parents with little education can still learn from and be inspired by the example of a caring school teacher or other adult. That child may decide to work hard to be the first in their family to finish high school or get a college degree or run a great business. And that's what all three things that my parents did. So you can learn from the examples of others. We hope that the examples of what we have lived through can help you also. Following the examples of others won't make all your problems go away, and neither should you just, follow everyone. Okay, you should follow them wisely. Okay, In fact, the more successful you become, the more problems will come your way. View your trials as a way to learn, grow in knowledge and experience, and overcome challenges. And again, if you follow others wisely, again, you're not just trying to copy someone, you're trying to take the best of what they exhibit and see if it works for you. Expect to see one or more challenges at every stage of your own personal development and in the course of developing your idea and venture. But also recognize that each challenge you overcome sets you up for greater success and makes you that much stronger for the next challenge. So in addition to the influence of the different factors that we talked about, there's also different levels of influence on you from the outside. So first of all, people are influenced by many forces. They are influenced by family members, the local community and culture, national and regional society, and global forces and institutions. These influences impact the formation of a person's development and identity, as I said. There is a certain core identity, but the visible part of that identity is often blended with the person's environment and experiences. So that's why it's often hard for us just to know what our true core identity is, upon which we can build, and move towards realizing our full identity or our full potential. And so that's why it's not just a process of doing things, you need to be. And in being, there's reflection, there's meditation, there's observation, there's working on yourself. Okay, and for a lot of people who are type A's like I was and still am in many ways, that is hard to do because we're used to doing and performing, right? But the power to do comes out of being. Okay, so this is more about to be, like Shakespeare said, being instead of doing. Now, when we talk about identity, we've been talking about personal identity, but I also want to briefly just mention that there are different levels or different types of identity. And so, it gets a little bit confusing. Everything has an identity, even if it's not a living thing. Like a phone has a brand identity, right? So, when we say identity, we basically mean what uniquely defines that person or that group or that thing. Okay? So here, of course, we have the individual identity, and then you have team and tribal, you have city, and you have corporate and country. Now, these again are just a few forms of identity. Okay, there's all sorts. There's unimaginable types of identity. But this just gives a basic example. So as a company, we have a corporate identity, right? And our corporate identity is in bringing things to life, one of the things, okay? And so that is part of our corporate value, or reflected in our core values, which some of them are passion, creativity, right? Excellence, ethical conduct, people-centered. And so when people hear the name, not so much conceptually, but Global Stratos or Global Biz Concierge or AfroBiz, then basically that's what people should see us as, those that bring things to life, that create new things, that create things that benefit society. Okay? And that's an example. Beyond the level of country also, people may also identify with and gain an identity from groups that are more transnational or global in terms of scale and diversity. And so we see a lot of this, obviously, with different platforms in the digital environment. In a sense, you quote unquote create your own nation, right? Because you have your own tribe. Okay, and that is not typically limited to geographic or even necessarily cultural boundaries. So now let's talk about people and economies. Understanding your personal identity can help you develop a venture, but identity affects much more than that. The world has billions of people, and their unique identities impact entire economies. Stated simply, if people did not exist, there would be no markets and no economies. Economies are created where there is an exchange of value. So no people would mean nobody to exchange value with, and hence economies would not exist. And you'll notice I'm overemphasizing some points. Keep in mind that markets are not about you, the entrepreneur, the ego. Rather, markets are about other people, the echo, like an ecosystem or economy. When you develop a product, solution, or venture, it will be sustained by your ability to provide value to other people, including customers and stakeholders. In fact, if you were the only person in the world, your venture would not be needed. You need to find ways to develop a profitable and sustainable business while also building more respectful and cooperative relationships with stakeholders. Let's just take an example, and I like to pick on Uber. Everyone really likes Uber from a customer perspective, the convenience and all of that, and so I'm not against that at all. I think, innovative ideas are great. They created an innovative product that uses private vehicles as a taxi service. It's a great idea, but Uber has overlooked some of the risks that come with innovation. In fact, they took more emphasis on making money and on the innovation instead of the overall ecosystem of stakeholders. Uber considered their potential customers and those who would make them money, but they didn't consider the likely results of their business practices and interactions with other stakeholders, including regulators, competing taxi services and drivers, and even passengers. Now, Uber is having problems due to a culture of focusing on making money and enlarging their business. Now, certainly, those are objectives, but those are really a means to an end because your purpose should be in a company in serving the people. So, let's say just in a simple way that Uber's purpose is to provide easy, quick, and affordable access to transportation for people, okay? The bad news is that Uber has been banned from some cities, not due to lack of innovation, but because they have eroded their value in the marketplace. For example, there are passenger safety, internal sexual harassment, and other issues in the organization they weren't focusing on. They also look for ways to avoid reporting to regulators, thus creating ethical and legal issues for themselves, customers, and other stakeholders. Now, it doesn't mean that in the short term, they can't be successful. But if we're looking for sustainable ventures, you can no longer just be focused on the company and shareholders. You have to be looking at the broader context of stakeholders. So instead of trying to work with stakeholders, Uber was figuring out ways to manipulate the system to remain profitable while sidestepping local regulations, legal ethical issues, and community concerns. The implications of this behavior became clear when investors and board members removed the founder as CEO and now is working toward changing its culture and operating model. You can also consider institutions and corporations to be people for the purposes of the idea cultivation and venture development process. After all, people run these organizations. You don't want to focus solely on what benefits you while ignoring or minimizing the needs and concerns of individual or organizational stakeholders. You need to find ways to develop a profitable and sustainable business while also building respectful and cooperative relationships with stakeholders, as I said before. Now, in some markets, people will resist innovation. This is a problem for your business, even if you develop great stakeholder relationships. In the case of Uber, the main choices they faced were either to find a better business model or to manipulate the market. They chose manipulation, making it impossible for them to focus on innovation and filling their environment with the right types of values. To be honest, I see a lot of this self-absorbed blindness in many of the ventures coming out of Silicon Valley. There are a lot of startups are just looking at how much money they can make. And I can give you my own experience. This was in the dot-com bubble of 2000 or 2001 actually in the United States. And I was consulting with a company. I was doing their staff. I was developing new people that were coming from universities and preparing them to work on project teams. And this was technology. And so I was teaching them one way. And when they got in the field on the teams, it was totally different. And I told them, it doesn't matter what they're doing in the field. And I know that they say that they're making money. I said, but ultimately it's going to hurt them. And so it became very evident very quickly that what the company was doing is they were recycling money or projects to make it look like they were growing. They went from 50 people to 500 people in less than 6 to 8 months. it looked like they had work. They had no work. It was from family, friends, money, and so it was just recycling. There was actually no business. But their goal was to go to go public, and then they would have cash. So the driver was cash. It wasn't actually the business. And so as they did that, they imploded. And it imploded because the entire market, much of the .coms at that time, were doing the same thing because they were actually greedy. They weren't trying to build sustainable ventures. Not that the businesses couldn't ultimately have become sustainable ventures, but because that was a pattern that was consistent among those companies at the time, then we got the .com bubble and it burst. Okay, and so again, that is not the cycle you want, and particularly in developing regions, you can't afford that. There are too many critical issues in countries, and so the key is entrepreneurial leadership and having sustainable ventures that come forth and provide value in the marketplace. The idea of just doing anything the way you want to because you have an innovative product is not the way to build a sustainable venture. And I just, again, want to emphasize this. The lesson here is to recognize how important it is to understand the relationships between people and the economy and the markets. These relationships will affect your venture. Very simply put, again, some people don't think of it this way, but, now I'm going to show you why it's actually good for you and providing high value for you to do this and to spend this time. It's not just because you want to do a sustainable venture and have a good reputation in the market, but it actually, if people are the center of your economy, by doing these things, you actually now are building your own consumers, your own customers, okay? So on this slide here, we have, different elements of what a economy around people is focused on. And if you want to go to our website, the AfroBiz Foundation or globalstratos.com, you'll actually see our mission statement, which very much reflects this new, and it's not really a new paradigm. It's just that, people are hopefully waking up. So this is how it's supposed to work. So while developing your venture, you really need to think about the economy and the market. You may find that some of your key stakeholders will resist your idea of venture, but you should try to find ways to bring them into the equation to benefit them. Even if you cannot convince all stakeholders, creating solutions that are broadly beneficial is of value. Consider not only the solutions, but how you deliver them. Who you are and how you deliver is critical. If people are the center of economies and markets, what is the impact of their personalities on a venture and really their identities? Each person has a unique purpose and destiny. They have a unique identity. Needs are driven by a person's purpose and destiny and are not just the basics like food and shelter. It's more than that. If you decide to become an airplane pilot, you must get training and pass tests to obtain a pilot's license. For every person's purpose or destiny, there will be unique needs. Now, a friend of mine gave me this quote, and I thought it was so significant. Needs create wealth and wants destroy wealth. If you have a need that will help you fulfill your purpose and destiny, that need will create wealth within you, allowing you to create even more wealth. It will also create opportunities for others, since they can develop wealth based on your needs. And that's the point I'm trying to get at. If you can target a group, a customer group, and you understand those needs to help them fulfill their destiny, their purpose, their, getting to the next level in their life, basically you're creating wealth for yourself and also for them. And that's the position you want to be on, but the side you want to be on. Wants can destroy wealth by destroying purpose and destiny. And we see it all the time. Extreme consumption is like a disease. And in fact, there's a disease called consumption, okay, that eats you from the inside. It's unhealthy in physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and other ways. Excessive wants cause people to stop reaching for the stars because people who want focus only on what they have now and how they can protect or use it. You can still have good things, but let your identity guide your focus. Now, the beautiful thing about having a unique identity is that you own whatever creative space is yours. You have infinite opportunities in that space. So again, as you develop yourself and you begin more self-aware and seeing the potential of what you can do, You basically have infinite opportunities. This may not translate into being a billionaire, but it does translate into having a full, exciting, and satisfying life. That's what happiness really is. It allows you to handle challenges better. They won't destroy your life since you're living in your purpose and destiny. If you focus on purpose and destiny, you can take on those challenges and get past them to achieve your goals. For each personal path, unique needs must be met to achieve your purpose and destiny. So for you as an entrepreneur, or for us as entrepreneurs, people's needs create infinite opportunities for those who are serving them and those needs. Okay, so remember that. That's the key thing. Now, let's just take a moment, though, to talk and understand a little bit more about what needs are. Okay, and I'm going to use Maslow's hierarchy, which was developed by Abraham Maslow, an American humanist psychologist in the 20th century, so that's 1900s something. This diagram depicts human needs ranging from the most basic to the most advanced. Everyone has needs at each of these levels. At the bottom are basic or survival needs, including physiological, safety, and security needs. Next, we move to the psychological or stability needs category, including the need for belonging and love, esteem, prestige, and feelings of accomplishment. Next, we have self-fulfillment or significance, self-fulfillment, and that's where you begin to reach your full potential. It's also where you can plug your actions into your purpose and destiny. Now, the key, though, actually, is that fulfilling your destiny does not require a rigid focus on satisfying only your personal desires. Fulfillment of personal desires will come, but as a result of helping others achieve their full potential. This is the transcendence level, and this is the significance level. This is the level we as entrepreneurs should aim for, because we should be helping to solve society's problems and meeting the needs of people, from basics like food and water to more advanced things like higher education, and contributing to the social good through service. A big problem is that many people, and not just in the business world, but here we're focused on the business world, use this hierarchy but don't understand that actually how you actually address all of these in your own life and in the lives of others is from working from purpose and destiny and significance, not trying to work up to it, but understanding who you are, operating in that, and then as you do that, you fulfill all the other areas. And I got a revelation about this, many years ago. And basically, and this is dealing with significance, success, stability, and survival. Significance swallows up everything that prevents you from being successful, stable, having stability, and surviving, okay? But when we work from the bottom up, we're trying to lift the entire pyramid above us, right? But now, purpose and destiny, it flows downward, okay? Which means it's an easier way of doing it, okay? Now, certainly we still have a lot of difficulties, and there's a lot of stuff involved in this. But the idea is that your energy, this seed of your energy, the potential that's at the top, right? When you focus on helping other people, it now flows down and cascades into everything else naturally. You're not trying to go against the current, okay? You're creating the flow, okay? That's important. Now, if you can function, which you can, function in the transcendence level now, again, you don't have to push upward. Even basic psychological and physical needs can be met when you are at the transcendence level, because then you are providing high value. This translates into things you can exchange, including money that can help you meet your other needs. Okay, so as a final note about this particular chapter, now let's think about how all of this personality, and all of these other things impact the markets. Unique needs allow for infinite combinations of opportunities. Needs evolve over time, location, and situation, meaning that things are changing frequently. This change contributes to turbulent and chaotic markets. As an example, consider how Apple saw a need about a decade ago, and actually it's more than a decade, slightly more than a decade, and developed the iPhone in response. They reinvented the smartphone. They didn't even know then all the things that it would do by now, but they knew there was something more to the smartphone than what it could do then. They saw the need and they acted on it. This type of innovation was unusual at the time, given the traditional way that business and ventures operated and used phones. Much of the understanding of that time was based on the myth of a very traditional, also stable environment, a state of affairs that does not really exist anymore. Okay. Now, at this time, technology was already moving fast and had been moving really, really fast since the 80s. But again, we're still over decades still trying to develop ventures that based on conditions where nothing ever changes, which is so totally untrue and unrealistic. And so you can see how businesses might get into trouble if that's their frame of reference. Things are moving at a very rapid pace today due to technology, inventions like the internet and other innovations. So we need a new and different framework to navigate these opportunities and create sustainable projects and ventures. Entrepreneurs can create such ventures by finding and seizing opportunities that are out there, by mobilizing resources and by doing what is needed to bring those opportunities to life. So entrepreneurial leadership is a key that unlocks the potential of the market today. In that understanding of those unique needs that just cause such variety and diversity and speed of change in the markets. Being an entrepreneur is important and creates opportunities for others. So whatever you're doing, if you've decided to be an entrepreneur, you are doing social good, okay? Because you create employment, but there's also many other ways that we'll talk about as you're in one of our venture programs of leveraging that and creating much larger impact, which in places like Africa, in any developing region, in any marginalized group or community, even in the United States, we as business people, as entrepreneurs, are actually called to do more. And in being called to do more, there is more benefit from that as well. And it includes monetary benefit. So your entrepreneurial venture can help you create customers, right? And in creating those customers, you create jobs for people, okay? And in fact, our work is focused, particularly ours, okay, not just entrepreneurs, but I'm speaking now of AfroBiz and Global Stratos, is focused on developing people because we know that over time people develop. As they develop more, it will create more potential in the market for our products and services. So we look at things perhaps differently than many others, but it's amazing the number of markets and things that we find that we are able to do because we have this understanding. We spent so much time understanding the dynamics of how to work with people and moving markets. Okay, so we had a lot to discuss in this particular module. So I'm going to put myself on pause so that the facilitator can have discussion with you. And basically what the facilitator is going to ask you is, what did you learn in this module? What were some key things? And you'll be allowed to converse for about 5 or 10 minutes about this. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to sum up. And hopefully you can see how your conversation aligns with what we feel are the key things that come from this module. So again, either if you're with a facilitator, they'll pause me. If you're doing this on your own, still please pause me and take time to think about this before you hear what I have to say. Okay, hopefully you had a lively conversation with each other or with yourself if you're going through this on your own. So let's talk about what some of the key points are. The first is that the challenge in your life is to discover your personal identity, which is something you will pursue throughout your life. It's not a one-time or a few-time thing. You don't find it all at once, but during the pursuit, you can continuously fulfill your purpose and destiny. Everything flows from personal identity, creativity, innovation, success, and significance. Your core identity is who you are. It is the seed of your potential. Your full identity unfolds over time if you work with it. How to describe yourself and others with the three main dimensions of personal identity. What are you born with? Your life and defining moments in your life. About the personal, different types of influence in personal development, as it also relates to identity, to the first point. Personal development is influenced by many different things, including your biology, growth and maturation, bodily functions, and the environment or context. Even how you reflect on your life can impact your personal development. There are also family, community, culture, society, and global influences, as well as individual, team, tribal, city, country, and corporate levels of identity. Your spirit is unleashed as your identity becomes more visible and powerful. You have the power to overcome many challenges caused by your environment and your physical functions. And the key is, as you understand who you really are, not just who you or others think you should be, you will see things in your life begin to align for good. They develop greater integrity in all aspects of your life. When this happens, it positively impacts your entrepreneurial abilities and it helps you develop your idea and venture. It works the same for people that you serve, your market. Understanding the basics of human nature is a key element in this journey. And with all this understanding that we talked about, or understanding people and your personal identity, we also talked about how this people-centered approach is a new construct for economies and markets. Now, again, I said it's not really new, but with the current way that things go, it is a new thing. Okay, so that we need a new construct because people really are the focus of the economy, that everyone in an economy has a unique identity and purpose. And that needs come about because people have purpose and destiny, okay? And those needs then are motivated by that purpose. You also learn that needs create wealth and wants destroy wealth. For each individual unique personal path, unique needs must be met to achieve that person's purpose and destiny. Now, we also talked about how these unique needs also affect markets. So we talked about how people's unique needs change and they evolve. They shift, called shifts in the market. The unique needs affect markets by allowing for infinite combinations of opportunities, by evolving over time, location, situation, etc., and by contributing to turbulent and chaotic markets. Technology, including the internet, is accelerating change ever more rapidly. Technological advancement is facilitating this acceleration in the economy, enabling people to explore their identity and travel very different life paths than in the past. This creates chaos, turbulence, and continual change, but it's also changing how people engage with each other and creating innumerable opportunities. That people's unique, evolving needs are totally the key, totally intertwined with economies and markets. You must understand how people and their needs interact with the economy and markets if you want to grow your venture from idea to concept to a seed model and do it successfully and in a sustainable way. Now, with all of this understanding about people, in the next module, we're going to start developing your ideas by understanding the problem and the people, okay, specifically, not just this general framework, and also being able to imagine the possibilities. That's it for Module 3 that focuses on people. I look forward to seeing you in Module 4.